All right, let's dive in. Today we're heading up north to Minnesota. We're going to be checking out Schoolcraft State Park.
Nice.
And for this deep dive, we've got a bunch of hiking reviews, looks like some blog posts, even some YouTube videos. Oh, and of course, all the official park info.
Yeah, it's interesting. Schoolcraft is often overlooked. It's kind of a hidden gem, really, compared to some of the bigger parks in Minnesota.
Ooh, I love a hidden gem. Okay. But you're saying it's less crowded. Even on, those popular holiday weekends, I'm a little skeptical.
You'd be surprised. A lot of the sources are saying, even when other parks are packed, Schoolcraft is still pretty quiet and peaceful.
Huh, interesting. So what makes it so special, besides, being a haven for introverts?
Well, for one thing, it's named after, Henry Rowe Schoolcraft.
Oh, yeah.
The explorer who charted the headwaters of the Mississippi River back in 1832.
Wow.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
He didn't do it alone. He was guided by an Anishinaabe guide named Uzzawindib.
Okay, so we're talking about the same Mississippi River that, goes all the way down to New Orleans.
Exactly. But, you see a different side of the Mississippi at Schoolcraft State Park.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we think of it as this grand, powerful force of nature.
Right.
But up there in Minnesota, it's still kind of in its youth. Narrower, a lot less imposing.
I like that. It's like the younger side of something that is so massive.
Exactly.
It's interesting that you mentioned that Schoolcraft had the Anishinaabe guide. I mean, what's the story there?
Well, I think it just highlights how important indigenous knowledge was, for these early explorers.
Yeah.
I mean, Schoolcraft would not have succeeded without Uzzawindib, without his guidance, his deep understanding of the land.
That's a great point. It kind of adds another layer to the whole experience,
Yeah.
Knowing that you're walking in the footsteps, not just of explorers, but the people who, actually called this area home for generations.
Absolutely. And speaking of stepping back in time, Schoolcraft has this incredible 300-year-old white pine tree.
Whoa, hold on. 300 years old.
Yeah, it's a survivor.
Yeah.
From the logging era. It was spared, they say, because its trunk was too crooked for lumber.
Wow, I have to admit, I am such a sucker for old trees. It's like they hold, centuries of stories. That's incredible.
Just imagine, right? All the changes it's witnessed. It was there long before, Schoolcraft, and it's still standing. It's a testament to nature, really.
Yeah. So where is this tree? Is it on a trail or something?
You can actually see it along the main hiking trail, which is this loop that goes through a virgin pine forest.
Wait, hold on. Did you just say virgin pine forest?
I did.
What does that even mean?
Basically, it means that the forest has never been logged. These white and red pines, they've been growing there for centuries, undisturbed.
Wow. That sounds incredible.
It really is something else.
Okay, so tell me more about this trail. How long is it? Is it a challenging hike?
Well, it's not bad at all. It's a pretty easy loop. Most people say it's about 1.75 miles, although, you'll find some people saying it's a bit shorter, some a little longer. But, either way, it's a pretty gentle walk through the forest.
Okay, you're really selling me on this place.
It's pretty great.
Gentle hikes, ancient trees, a little glimpse into the past. What's not to love?
And the best part is, you get to enjoy it all with hardly any crowds. It's like having a little piece of wilderness all to yourself.
You've convinced me. I want to go. I want to spend the night, maybe 2. I want to be immersed in all this.
Nice.
What about camping?
Well, if you're looking for luxury camping, this isn't the spot.
Okay.
It's pretty rustic. The campground has 28 non-electric campsites. So no hookups for, your RV or anything like that.
You had me at no RVs.
Yeah.
But are there at least bathrooms and water? I mean, I'm all for roughing it, but there are limits.
Don't worry, there are vault toilets.
Yeah.
And there's access to drinking water.
Okay, good.
So it's rustic, but you're not totally stranded.
Right. Okay, so we've covered the history, the hiking. What else is there to do in Schoolcraft? Are we just, limited to the forest?
No, not at all. Remember, the park's right along the Mississippi River.
Oh, that's right.
So there's a boat launch for anyone who wants to, get out on the water.
Okay.
You can go canoeing, kayaking, even fishing.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
I do love a bit of paddling. Is there anything, interesting to see along the river, good fishing spots?
Well, this part of the Mississippi is known for, walleye and northern pike.
Okay.
So it's definitely a popular spot if you're into fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you're not, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
You can paddle along the banks and, just enjoy the peace and quiet, maybe see some wildlife.
Sounds idyllic.
Yeah.
So you can make it a longer paddling trip or just, a nice day trip.
Exactly.
What about during the winter time?
Oh, in the winter, Schoolcraft is totally different. It becomes this winter wonderland, perfect for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing.
Snowshoeing through a virgin pine forest. Okay, I am sold. This is going on my list.
It's pretty amazing.
But okay, before I get too carried away, are there any downsides? Anything a visitor should know about, like, before they head to Schoolcraft?
Well, no place is perfect, right?
True.
One thing that comes up a lot is the mosquitoes.
Oh, mosquitoes.
Yeah, they can be pretty bad, especially after it rains.
Oh, man. The bane of every outdoor enthusiast's existence.
I know, right?
Anything else we should know?
The roads leading to the park are dirt roads. So, just be aware they can get a bit rough, especially if there's been bad weather.
Good to know. Come prepared for, bugs and bumpy roads.
Exactly.
Okay, what about, amenities? Is there anything else in the park itself besides, the campground and the trails?
Not really. If you need supplies, you'll have to head into one of the nearby towns. Same for restaurants. Schoolcraft is really all about embracing the simple life.
So disconnect, get back to nature, enjoy the peace and quiet.
Exactly.
It's funny, we always hear about these big explorations, but we rarely think about, the people who made those expeditions possible, the ones working behind the scenes,
That's true.
Like in Schoolcraft's case, what would that journey have even been like without Oswin, Did he share stories of the land, or what was their relationship like?
Right. It really makes you wonder.
Yeah. It just goes to show there's always more to the story.
Absolutely.
More, perspectives to think about.
Exactly. And those are the kind of things that can make a place like Schoolcraft that much richer.
Yeah, totally. It's the difference between reading a textbook, and actually being there, experiencing it firsthand.
For sure. Speaking of which, have you ever been in a virgin pine forest?
I can't say that I have. I've hiked through plenty of forests, but I imagine, a forest that's never been logged is pretty special.
It's a different experience.
Mm.
The trees are massive. You're just surrounded by this ancient presence. And the air smells like pine needles.
Okay, now I'm getting serious FOMO. I can practically smell those pine needles.
It's pretty great.
It sounds like the perfect blend of, history, nature, and solitude.
It is. And, we can't forget about the Mississippi River.
Oh, that's right. We've been so focused on the forest.
I know, right?
We almost forgot about the river. What was it like paddling along the Mississippi up there?
Well, it's a lot different from paddling, the lower Mississippi. It's quieter, more intimate. You really get a sense of, connection with the river.
It's like seeing the river in its more, untamed state.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet the fishing's good up there.
Oh, it is. The Mississippi's known for walleye and northern pike in that area, so it's pretty popular for anglers. Even if you're not into fishing, just being out on the water surrounded by the trees, it's really peaceful.
And I bet it's beautiful in the winter.
Oh, in the winter, it's completely different. It's just stunning. Like you said, snowshoeing along the banks with the snow-covered trees reflected in the water.
Magical.
It is.
All right, so we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
We've talked about history, the hiking, camping, even, the canoeing and the snowshoeing. Is there anything else that we've missed? Anything else a potential visitor should know before heading to Schoolcraft?
Yeah. Just to, reiterate, be prepared for those mosquitoes.
Right, the mosquitoes.
Especially after rain.
Yeah. Any tips for, dealing with them?
Bring plenty of bug spray, wear long sleeves, and try not to be out at dusk and dawn when they're, the worst.
Good advice. Good advice. What about those dirt roads? Anything else about, getting to the park?
Just be aware that they can be pretty rough, especially if there's been rain or snow. So, a higher clearance vehicle might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, good point, good point. So not the easiest place to get to, but that's probably part of the charm, right?
Right. Keeps the crowds away.
Preserves that sense of solitude. Exactly.
Well, all right. I'm sold. Schoolcraft sounds like the perfect escape, really, for anyone who wants to, reconnect with nature, explore some history, and just enjoy the peace and quiet.
It really is.
Okay, so just to recap for our listeners,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways? What makes Schoolcraft State Park worth a visit?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just the chance to experience a different side of the Mississippi. I mean, we think of the Mississippi as this grand, powerful river.
Right, right.
But in Schoolcraft, you see its more, I don't know, youthful side.
Right, like it's the origin story.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's just, it's such a cool perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's the history, the fact that it's named after Henry Rowe Schoolcraft, who charted the headwaters of the river back in 1832.
Right, and don't forget, he had help.
Yeah, exactly. He had the Anishinaabe guide, Ozo-Windib. It just, it makes you realize how important it is to acknowledge all the people who contributed to these big moments in history,
Yeah, for sure. Especially the indigenous peoples whose, knowledge and connection to the land was so essential.
Absolutely. And that connection to the land is something you really feel at Schoolcraft. I mean, the ancient trees, the forests, even the river.
And that 300-year-old white pine, I mean, that alone is worth the trip.
Oh, yeah. To be in the presence of a tree that's, seen that much history, it's incredible.
Yeah, it really makes you realize how, I don't know, how small we are in the grand scheme of things.
It does.
Okay, so history, nature, solitude. What about the practical stuff? Like, what kind of activities can people do there?
Well, there's the hiking, of course. The main trail is a pretty easy loop through that virgin pine forest.
Right.
And then there's canoeing, kayaking, and fishing.
All on the Mississippi River.
Yep. Great fishing for walleye and northern pike.
A good spot.
And in the winter, there's cross-country skiing and snowshoeing.
I mean, can you imagine snowshoeing through a virgin pine forest? That's just
It's magical.
amazing.
It is.
Okay, so Schoolcraft has a lot to offer.
Definitely. In every season. But, before we wrap up and send our listeners off to plan their own adventures,
Yeah.
are there any, downsides? Anything they should be aware of?
Well, like we talked about, the mosquitoes can be pretty intense.
Right.
So, definitely pack that bug spray.
Don't forget the bug spray.
And those dirt roads, remember? They can be a bit rough.
Yeah. A higher clearance vehicle might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that there aren't a lot of amenities, within the park itself. You'll have to go into town if you need supplies.
So it really is a place to disconnect,
Yeah, for sure.
unplug, and immerse yourself in nature.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we do, I have one final question for you. We've talked a lot about Henry Schoolcraft and, his exploration of the Mississippi. But with Ozo-Windib in the picture now, his Anishinaabe guide, how should that change how we view Schoolcraft's legacy? That's a really good question. I mean, it really makes you think about, how we view history and how we tell these stories.
Yeah, it's easy to just focus on, the big names, the so-called discoverers. But it's important to remember those discoveries were often made with a lot of help.
For sure.
And, particularly from indigenous people.
Yeah. In Schoolcraft's case, you can't deny Ozo-Windib played a huge role in his success. But for a long time, his contribution was overlooked.
That's kind of sad, really.
Yeah, it is. It makes you wonder how many other stories like that are out there.
Right.
How many people were left out of the history books.
And it's especially important, I think, when we're talking about places like Schoolcraft State Park, places that have so much, history and cultural significance.
Yeah. Just imagine, right?
Yeah.
You're walking through those forests, idling on that river, and you know that you're not just experiencing nature, you're also retracing the steps of, the people who came before you.
It's like it just adds so much depth to the whole experience,
It's like looking at a map versus actually going to a place.
Right.
It's just there's so much more to it.
So, I guess what I'm trying to say is as we end this deep dive, I want to encourage our listeners to really think about, the multiple layers of history when they visit Schoolcraft or really any place,
I agree. Don't just look at the scenery. Really think about the history of the place.
Right. Think about the different perspectives.
Exactly.
And, maybe even do a little research.
Yeah.
Learn more about Ozo-Windib.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Anishinaabe people.
That's a great idea. There's always more to learn.
Well, all right. I think that's a good place to wrap up this deep dive. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we talked about.
Yeah, and for more information on, planning your own trip to Schoolcraft.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those deep dives going.